Hi there. We're going to go over how to find the interquartile range of an even dataset. By even dataset, I mean a dataset with an even number of values. You should be able to find the interquartile range of any dataset, but I know sometimes people like to look up specific examples, so we're going to do one today with an even number of data points. Here's the situation. 8 people were asked how many frogs they had pet in the past year. The data is, and there's our data, 8 data points, and we are asked to find the interquartile range. Let's get to it. Now, to find the interquartile range, also called IQR, just like with a lot of statistics, we've got to put the data set in order from least to greatest. The way I would do that is just take a quick look at it and try to pick out the smallest value. I'd pick out 5 in this case. I start with 5, cross 5 off the list, and continue in that fashion. You might make a mistake or two. Just be sure to double check when you're done, and it should be pretty easy to fix the occasional mistake. I'll go ahead and put the list in order, and we'll skip to that point. There we go. Now we've got a data set in order from least to greatest. If you're working this out on your own as well, hopefully your list agrees with mine. Now remember, the interquartile range is a measure of spread. It tells us in some way how spread out data is. In particular, it tells us about spread across the middle half of the data. So once we've got our data in order from least to greatest, the first step from here is to split the data into 2 halves, a lower half and an upper half. Now, since we have an even number of data values, we can do that very simply. Half the data points make up the lower half the data points make up the upper half. In other words, let's take a look at this data set. There are 8 numbers, so 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers make up the lower half, and 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers make up the upper half. In other words, just find the middle point, which is right here, and split the data across that point. If this were an odd data set, then we would actually have a number here in the middle, and we would just exclude that and look at what remains as the lower and upper halves of the data. Now that we've got the data split into 2 halves, it's very easy to find the interquartile range. All we have to do is find the first quartile, called Q1, and then find the third quartile, Q3, and then subtract them. Now, the first quartile, Q1, is the median of the lower half of data, and the median is the number in the middle. But the lower half of data has an even number of data values. So how do we find the number in the middle when we've got 4 data values? Well, the middle is here between 8 and 12. So what we have to do to find the median of this lower half of data is take these 2 numbers that are in the middle, 8 and 12. The median is the number halfway between them, or the average of them. So Q1, the median of the lower half of data, is the number halfway between the 2 numbers in the middle, so halfway between 8 and 12, which you might be able to guess is 10. 10 is halfway between 8 and 12, but the way you could calculate that, if you weren't able to just see that, is to add the numbers together and divide by 2. That gives us their average, the number that's halfway between them, which is 10. So Q1 is 10, and we can calculate Q3, the third quartile, in a similar way. Q3 is the median of the upper half of data, and since the upper half of data has an even number of data values, that's going to be the number halfway between the 2 numbers in the middle, so halfway between 25 and 30. To find that, we can add 25 and 30 and divide by 2, which will tell us that Q3 is 27.5. Now we've got the upper quartile, Q3, and the lower quartile, Q1. The interquartile range is just the range, or the difference between these quartiles. So IQR, the interquartile range of our even data set, is Q3 minus Q1, which in this case is 27.5, that's Q3, minus Q1, which is 10, and so the interquartile range of our data set is 17.5. So that's all there is to finding the interquartile range of an even data set. Separate the data into a lower half and an upper half, find the median of the lower half, Q1, the median of the upper half, Q3, and then take Q3 minus Q1. Alright, hopefully that made sense, but quickly I want to show you one other thing. Here is our data set as we had split it up into a lower and an upper half. And in this example, those halves both also had an even number of data values, 4 and 4. But that's not always going to be the case. Suppose we had removed the lowest value, 5, from our data set, and the highest value, 32. Then we still have an even data set. We've got 6 values, and this would be the lower half, and this would be the upper half, but now those halves both have an odd number of data values. How do you handle this situation? Pretty much the same way. You've just got to find Q1, which is the median of the lower half of data, and Q3, the median of the upper half of data. But now, since they are odd halves, there is only one number in the middle. When there were 2 numbers in the middle, we had to take the number halfway between them. But now there's only one number in the middle. So what's the first quartile? It's just 12, the number in the middle. What's the third quartile? It would just be 25, the number in the middle. And so our interquartile range in this slightly different example would be 25 minus 12, which is 13. All right, let me know if you have any questions down in the comments.
Head in the clouds like a little balloon, scaling the stratosphere, calm